You already know what a Roman soldier looks like. Polished armor, a red cloak, an eagle held up somewhere in good Mediterranean sun. Hold that picture for a moment and then take it apart, because tonight you're not that man. Tonight you're standing on a wall at the top of Britain in the dark in the middle of winter, and the enemy you're actually afraid of is the cold. This is the northern edge of the Roman Empire, around the year 130. 80 Roman miles of stone laid from one coast of this island to the other, still so new in places that the mortar has barely finished curing. You're not a legionary. The legions built this wall and moved on. You're an auxiliary, recruited a long way from here in a country you can still remember, and you're one of the men left behind to stand on it. The Romans didn't measure a night the way you do. They cut it into 4 equal watches, sunset to sunrise, and gave each one a number: the first watch, the second, the third, and the fourth, the last and the longest feeling, the one that ends in daylight. Tonight you and I are going to keep all 4 of them together, in order from the moment the gates close to the moment somebody else takes your place. Before we begin, if these help you sleep, a like or a subscribe keeps them coming, and it genuinely helps. I'm also always curious where in the world you're. Leave your city and your local time in the comments. It's one of my favorite things about doing this. Now get comfortable. Properly comfortable. Blankets, pillow, the whole arrangement. Let your shoulders come down away from your ears. There's nothing here you need to remember. No test at the end, and no reason to stay awake for the ending. Nothing bad is going to happen tonight. No attack comes. This is simply one ordinary winter night on the wall, told slowly, and if you drift off somewhere in the middle of it, that's exactly what it's for. Ready? Your boots are already wet. That's the first thing you notice every single evening, and it's the thing you will still be thinking about 4 hours from now. The turf underfoot never really dries between October and April. The wet works its way up through the leather and into the wool wrapped around your feet, until you stop being able to feel your toes as separate things, and they become one cold shape at the end of each leg. You're standing in the gateway of a mile castle, waiting to be told where to go. The smell here's always the same, and you could find your way home by it blindfolded. Wood smoke first, from the ovens and the barrack fires behind you, a low gray smell that clings to everything you own. Then wet stone, which has a smell of its own, cold and mineral, like the inside of a well. Then sheep fat and oil worked into the rings of your mail this morning, because the damp in this country will eat iron alive if you let it. Underneath all of that, faintly, the latrine, and under that, 60 other men who have also not been properly warm since autumn. You have been here 2 years. You can remember, if you concentrate, what it smelled like where you grew up. River mud and cut hay and your mother's cooking fire. You do not concentrate on it very often. It's easier not to. Somebody behind you laughs at something. The sound carries oddly in cold air, arriving flat and close as though the speaker were standing at your shoulder. And then the light starts to go. Dusk in the north of Britain in December isn't an event. It's a slow subtraction. There's no burning red sky, no long golden hour of the kind you would have known further south. The gray simply gets deeper, and the hills opposite lose their edges one after another, and at some point you realize you have been looking at nothing for a while. The order to close the gates comes from a man you can hear but not yet see. Both leaves of the north gate swing in, and they're heavier than they look, oak-faced with iron, and they complain the whole way. Then the bar drops into its slot, one flat wooden knock that you feel in your chest more than here. It's the same sound every evening of your life here. 2 years of it, your body has learned to read that sound as the end of the day, the way your body once learned to read a bell or a door, or a particular footstep on a particular stair. North of that gate the road keeps going. That's the thing people never quite believe about this wall. It's not the edge of the world with nothing beyond it. There's a road and a bridge and country out there with people in it. Farms, cattle, families, quarrels, weather. Some of those people came through this gate today to trade, and were counted on the way in and counted on the way out. You know a few of them by sight. One of them sold you a very poor knife last spring, and you have never entirely forgiven him. Inside the walls, the evening arranges itself. The cook fires get their last feeding. Somebody is grinding grain, a slow scrape and turn, that will go on longer than seems reasonable. 2 men are arguing without heat about a debt of 11.5 denarii, which has been the same debt and the same argument since midsummer. Neither of them expects to win. It has become a way of passing time, like weather talk. You eat standing up. Hard biscuit, the twice-baked kind that keeps for months and asks a great deal of your teeth. Wheat porridge with something green cooked into it. A strip of salt bacon. And beer, thin and sour and slightly cloudy, brewed locally by a man whose entire job is brewing beer for soldiers, which tells you something about what the army considers essential. It's not good beer. It's warm though, and it's yours. And you drink it slowly because standing still with something warm in your hands is a small pleasure, and there aren't many of those tonight. Somebody hands you a piece of cheese without saying anything. You take it without saying anything. That's a whole conversation in its way. Then the watchword comes round. This is the part of the evening that never becomes ordinary, no matter how many times you do it. A small wooden tablet moves from hand to hand through the fort, and written on its one word, chosen fresh today, known only for tonight. You look at it, you hold it long enough to be sure of it, you pass it on. It goes the whole way round every unit, and then it comes back to the man who wrote it. And if it doesn't come back, somebody has to explain why. Tonight's word is a short one. You won't say it aloud again until somebody in the dark asks you for it. And then you will say it once, quietly, and it will decide what happens next. There's a version of tonight where that matters enormously. It's not tonight. Tonight nobody comes. But the word goes round anyway, because a system that only works when you need it doesn't work at all. And everyone here understands that in their bones, without ever having been told it in those words. You're assigned a turret, 2 of you, a stretch of wall, and the hours between now and midnight. You collect what you need. Your cloak, heavy wool, thick with grease and smoke, which is the single most valuable object you own tonight and which you wouldn't trade for silver. A scarf wound at your throat because mail rubs in cold metal against a bare neck is a particular misery. Your spear, your shield, which you will mostly lean against a wall and which exists tonight more as a habit than a plan. A lamp with a wick already trimmed. You do not take your helmet. Nobody does, not for a quiet watch in winter. It's cold to wear and you can't hear anything in it, and hearing is the entire job. Then you climb. The steps up to the wall top are worn already, only a few years old and already dished in the middle where thousands of feet have found the same line. You go up them without looking, one hand out to the stone, and the wind finds you about halfway. Not a gust, just a steady pressure from the northwest that won't stop again until dawn. And there it is, the top of the wall. 8 or 9 feet of walkway with a parapet on the north side, running away from you into the dark in both directions, following the land as it rises and falls. To your left it climbs a crag and disappears. To your right it drops toward a hollow where you can't see it at all, and then reappears much further off as a faint line against slightly less dark ground. Below the north face, the ditch. Beyond the ditch, country. You stand for a moment and let your eyes adjust because they will, given a little time and patience, and there's more to see out there than you would think. The first watch begins. Before we go up, it's worth walking the fort once because you know it so well that you have stopped seeing it, and tonight it's worth seeing. It's not large. You could cross it in a couple of minutes at a walk. But everything in its place deliberately, and the same plan, more or less, has been laid out on frontiers from here to the desert, so that a soldier moved from the Danube to this place would know where to find the granary on his first evening without asking. The main street runs from the north gate to the headquarters building, and everything else fits around it. The granaries are the best built things here, and that tells you what the army is actually afraid of. Raised floors, so the air moves underneath and the grain stays dry in a country that's trying very hard to make everything wet. Buttressed walls, because full granaries push outward. Bins inside holding enough to feed this garrison for a year, possibly 2. The men who planned this place assumed that one day the road might be cut, and they built for it. And in the meantime the whole thing sits there quietly holding more wheat than anyone can imagine eating. You have unloaded carts into it. You know the smell of it. Dry, dusty, faintly sweet. The one warm-smelling building in the fort. The headquarters building sits at the center with a courtyard and a hall, and at the back of it the shrine. That's where the standards live. You put your head in sometimes on your way past in daylight. There's nothing dramatic about the room. It's small and cold, and there are the standards in their sockets, and below them, in a strong room cut into the floor, the pay chest, which is an arrangement that says everything about this institution. The sacred objects and the money in the same room, guarded by the same man, and it wouldn't occur to anyone here that this is strange. There's a bathhouse outside the walls because you don't put a furnace inside a fort if you can avoid it. It's not open tonight, and you're not going tonight, but you should know it exists, because it's the thing that most surprises people about a frontier posting. Hot room, warm room, cold plunge. Underfloor heating driven by a furnace somebody has to feed all day. Out here at the top of the world in the mud, the Roman army built itself somewhere to get properly clean, and sit in steam and complain. You have your favorite corner of it. Everyone does. On your rest day you will be in there for as long as they let you, going slowly pink. And it's the only time all week you will be warm all the way through rather than warm on one side. Past that, the hospital, where 3 men are tonight. One with a bad chest, one who did something to his shoulder-lifting stone, and one who isn't really ill but has managed to make a convincing case and everybody knows it, and nobody minds much. And past that, the settlement. This is the part that's not in the plan, and it has grown up outside the gate the way it grows up outside every fort in the empire. Houses, workshops, a smith, people selling things. Families, children who were born here, and who consider this place entirely normal, which it is, to them. Traders come up from the south and sell you things you don't need at prices you resent. There's a man who deals in wine, another in shoes, another in small bronze things that people buy for reasons they couldn't defend afterwards. There's beer, obviously. There are women who are married to soldiers in every way that matters, and in no way that the army will admit to on paper. And there are children who have a father in the barracks and will one day have his name on a document. You know these people, not well, but you know their faces and they know yours. And when your unit was sent east for 6 weeks last year, somebody in that settlement noticed you had come back. That's not nothing. On a frontier it's quite a lot. Now the paperwork, and then we'll go up. Somewhere tonight a clerk is finishing a strength report. It says how many men this unit has on paper, and then it takes that number apart honestly. So many here and fit, so many sick, so many with a wound, so many with an inflammation of the eyes, which is a complaint this climate seems to produce endlessly. And then, the part that always surprises people, so many absent, detached, sent somewhere, men at the quarry cutting stone, men gone south to fetch supplies, men lent to another unit entirely and not yet returned, men escorting something, men at a place 3 days from here for reasons that made sense to somebody a month ago. The number actually standing in this fort tonight is a fraction of the number on the roll, and everybody in the chain of command knows it, and it's written down plainly, and sent up the line without embarrassment. The empire's real character is in that document somewhere. A man on a cold frontier, at the end of a long day, writing down an honest number. Somewhere else in the fort, another clerk is copying a duty roster for tomorrow. Who is in the bathhouse working the furnace? Who is in the ovens? Who is at the gate? Who is on the wall? Who is cleaning the latrine? Who is mending boots? Your name is on it, in a column with a task beside it. And that's the shape of your life. A name in a column with a task beside it, renewed daily, for 25 years. 25 years. That's the term. At the end of it, if you live, you get a bronze diploma with your name punched into it, and the formal grant of citizenship for you and your children. And you will carry that around for the rest of your days and show it to people. That's what all this is for in the end. A document with your name punched into it, and your children's future written on the back of 25 winters. And tonight, standing in the yard with your beer going cold in your hand and the light nearly gone, you're, what, some years in. You don't count precisely tonight. Tonight you're only doing the next thing, which is going up onto the wall, in the dark, in December. Which is where we are going. The man on watch with you tonight is older than you and talks less. This suits you. You have stood with men who fill every silence, and after the first hour it becomes a kind of work. You walk the stretch together, then apart, then together again. No formal pattern, just the slow oscillation of two people covering ground and keeping warm. Your footsteps on the wall top make a particular gritty sound, sand and small stone under hobnails, and when you stop the sound stops with a half-beat delay, because your companion is a few paces behind. The turret itself is small, stone-roofed with a doorway on the south side and a window looking north, and inside it there's a bench, a hearth, and the accumulated smell of every man who has ever sat in there wet. It's not warm. It's out of the wind, which at this point in the winter is very nearly the same thing. You get the lamp going. It takes 3 attempts because the wick is damp and everything is damp, and the small flame it finally produces is the exact size of a thumbnail and casts almost no light at all. That's deliberate. A bright light on the wall top would ruin your night vision and announce your position to the entire valley. The lamp isn't for seeing. It's for having a fire, which is a different need, and an older one. You go back out. Now, the sky. If there's cloud, the night is simply black, and you work by ear. But tonight the cloud breaks, and you get the thing that almost makes this posting worth it. There's no light in this world. None. Not a lamp for 40 miles that isn't Roman, and the Roman ones are hooded. So when the cloud pulls back, the stars come out with a completeness you may never have seen. Not the few dozen bright ones you might pick out from a town, but the whole crowded depth of it. Layer behind layer, the faint band of the Milky Way lying across the sky like spilled meal. There's enough light in it to walk by, genuinely. After an hour outside you can see the shape of the land, the pale line of the ditch, the darker mass of scrub in the hollow, your own hands. Your companion says something about the stars. Not poetry. A practical remark about the weather, they promise. Clear sky means colder. Colder means a harder night and a better morning. You agree. And then you both stop talking again, and the wind takes over. Learn the sounds because they're most of the job. The wind is the constant, and it changes register depending on where you stand. A low push in the open, a thin whistle at the corner of the parapet, a hollow note across the mouth of the turret door. Under that, sheep a long way off, an occasional complaint. Water in the ditch, and every so often, something small moving in the scrub below the north face, which is a fox or a hare or nothing at all. You have learned in 2 years which sounds mean anything. Almost none of them do. A man new to this wall spends his first month reacting to everything and sleeping badly. You spent that month too. Now your ears do the sorting without troubling you, and you only surface when the pattern breaks. Twice in this watch, the pattern breaks. The first time it's a bird, something disturbed out of the scrub, going up loud and indignant, and both of you stop dead, and look at each other, and stand very still for a slow count of 30. Nothing follows. The bird resettles. You go back to walking. Your heart takes rather longer to go back to walking than the rest of you does. The second time it's a light, out in the north, small and orange and much further away than it first appears. You watch it for a while. Your companion watches it too, and eventually says a farm, and you both accept that because it almost certainly is a farm. Somebody out there feeding a fire in a roundhouse, doing exactly what you're doing, which is getting through a December night. That thought sits with you longer than you expect it to. Down the wall, at the next turret, somebody moves a lamp across a doorway. It's not a signal. It's just a man standing up. But you see it, and it tells you he is there. And that's worth more than any signal. This is the truth about the wall that nobody writing about it afterwards will bother to record. It's not a place where anything happens. It's a place where men stand within sight of one another, all night, every night, for years. So that on the very rare occasion when something does happen, there's already a chain of people awake to pass it along. You're one link. Tonight your entire purpose is to be awake in this spot, and to be seen to be awake by the men either side of you. Around the middle of the watch, you go back into the turret and sit because you're allowed to. And because standing up for 3 hours isn't endurance, it's stupidity. You eat the cheese you were given earlier. You think about the letter. Everyone here gets letters, or waits for them, and they're almost never about anything. Yours arrived 11 days ago, and you have read it so many times you no longer need to look at it. It came with socks. 2 pairs of socks, a pair of sandals, and underpants, which sounds like a joke, until you have spent a winter here, and then it sounds like the most loving thing anyone has ever done for you. Somebody at home thought about your feet, somebody imagined the cold you were in, and did the only useful thing that could be done from that distance. The letter also mentions an invitation. A woman you have never met is having a birthday at a fort a day's ride west of here, and the wife of your commander has been invited, and this is enormous news in the way that small news becomes enormous in a place like this. There will be a proper dinner. There will be people who have washed. Somebody will wear something that's not wool. You won't be going, you know that, but you like knowing that it's happening somewhere on this same wall, in this same weather, that a few miles from where you're standing, a woman is writing to another woman about a party and pressing her own greeting into the wax at the end because a secretary wrote the rest. That's the empire too, not just the ditch and the mail and the watchword. Also, a birthday. You go back outside. The wind has picked up slightly. The stars are still there. Your companion has taken up a position at the north parapet with his cloak pulled forward over his head, so that he looks from behind like a small standing stone. You take the other end of the stretch. You look north and let your eyes go soft and wide the way you have learned to, because that's how you catch movement in the dark, never by staring at a point, always by letting the whole field arrive at once. Nothing moves for a long time, and somewhere in that long time, without any announcement, the first watch runs out. Standing up here in the dark with nothing to do but walk and listen, you have a great deal of time to think about the thing you're standing on. You helped build a piece of it. Not much. Auxiliaries weren't the main labor. The legions did the heavy work. But you carried, and you dug, and you know what's under your feet in a way that a man arriving next year won't. So, the wall. It runs from the eastern sea to the western sea, and it's not one thing built once. It's a project that changed its mind repeatedly while it was being made, and you can read the arguments in the stonework if you know where to look. Sections that start broad and then continue narrower, because somebody somewhere decided that 10 Roman feet was more wall than the situation required and 8 would do. Foundations laid wide with a thinner wall sitting on them, which anybody can see and nobody comments on. Every Roman mile along it, a mile castle, a small fortified gate with a gate through the wall, and room for a handful of men. Between each pair of mile castles, 2 turrets evenly spaced, which means that along the entire length of this frontier, there's a manned position roughly every third of a mile all night for 80 miles. Stand on the wall on a clear night and you can see the next one east and the next one west. That's the entire design, not a fortress, a chain of eyes. In front, the ditch. Wide, deep, with a flat bottom, and it's not there to stop an army. No ditch stops an army. It's there to slow down a man with a cow. It makes the crossing a decision rather than a stroll, and a decision takes time, and time is all anybody up here needs. And behind you, on the south side, the strange one. Another ditch, with banks either side of it, running roughly parallel to the wall for its whole length. A second boundary facing the wrong way. Nobody has explained it to you satisfactorily, and you have asked. The best answer you were ever given came from an old cavalryman who said it marks where the army's ground begins, and that everything between the two is military, and everything south of the second one is ordinary country, and you cross it at the crossing points and not wherever you like. A customs line, near enough, which means this wall isn't only about the people to the north. It's also about controlling the people to the south and taxing what moves and knowing who goes where. That's worth sitting with on a cold night. You're standing on something that's at least as much a border post as a battlement. Most of what happens here isn't fighting. Most of what happens here's counting. The gates through the mile castles are open in daylight. People go through in both directions. They are looked at and questioned and sometimes charged and sometimes turned back, and mostly waved on. Cattle come south, goods go north. A wall with a gate every mile isn't trying to seal a country. It's trying to make a country pass through doorways. Now the other thing you think about up here, which is how a message would actually travel if there were ever a message. Not fire. Everyone always assumes fire. Fire is slow to make in a wet country and impossible to unsay once lit, and no one on this wall wants to be the man who set a beacon because a fox went through the scrub. It goes by voice and by foot, and by horse. You shout to the turret, they shout to the next. Somebody runs to the mile castle. The mile castle sends a rider to the fort sends riders east and west and south. It's not fast, it takes what it takes, but it's reliable, and it doesn't lie. And a rider carries detail that a fire can't. How many, where, going which way, on foot or mounted. You've seen it run in earnest exactly once, and it turned out to be a large group of perfectly legitimate traders arriving early. And the whole chain stood down feeling faintly foolish, and the officers were pleased because the chain had worked. Now, the thing you actually watch for. Not an army. There's no army out there. The people north of this wall aren't massing in the dark with siege engines. They're farming and herding and getting through the same winter you are. What you watch for is small and specific. A few men on foot moving at night in a line near the ditch. Cattle where there should be no cattle. A light where there's no farm. Somebody looking at the wall for slightly too long in daylight, from slightly too far away. Raids happen. They aren't battles, they're thefts, and they're aimed at livestock, and they happen because a beast is worth a great deal and the border is long. When one succeeds, somebody loses animals and somebody writes it down and a patrol goes out and usually finds nothing. So your whole job, distilled, be visible, be awake, and make tonight a night on which nobody bothers. You have been up here long enough now that the cold has got past the interesting stage. Your ears burn. Your fingers have gone from painful to slow, which is worse, and you flex them inside the cloak in a rhythm without thinking about it. Down at the ditch, water is moving. Above you, the whole enormous sky, and the wall runs away east and west into the dark, mile after mile, with a man standing every third of a mile the whole way to two different seas. Several thousand of you, tonight, awake in a line across the top of an island, none of you doing anything at all. It's when you let yourself think about it plainly, an extraordinary way for a species to spend a night. You walk your stretch again, 61 blocks to the turn. Since we have hours yet, and since you're wearing all of it, let us go through what's actually on your body tonight. It's more interesting than it sounds, and it's the difference between a bad night and a survivable one. Start at your feet, because your feet start everything. Wool wrappings first, wound round and round, and over those the socks that came in the parcel, both pairs, which is an indulgence you wouldn't normally permit yourself, and which tonight you have decided is justified. Then the boots, closed boots, laced, not the open sandals people picture when they picture this army. Nobody in the north wears those in winter. Whoever first sent an order to Britain for open military sandals learned quickly. The soles are studded with iron hobnails, dozens of them, in a pattern. They make you loud on stone, and they wear out and they get replaced, and there's a man in the settlement who does nothing else. On frost, the studs are treacherous. On mud, they're the only reason you stay upright. Your legs are covered. That's the other thing that would surprise a Roman from Rome. You're wearing trousers, wool to below the knee. The army in this province gave up on bare legs almost immediately, and never went back, and the sight of a soldier in trousers would have scandalized somebody's grandfather, and is now simply what a soldier looks like here. Over that, a tunic, wool, long-sleeved for winter. Under it, another tunic, because two thin layers beat one thick one, and every soldier in every century has worked this out independently. Then the mail. It's a shirt of iron rings, each one linked through 4 others, thousands upon thousands of them, and it weighs somewhere around the weight of a large dog. You have worn it so often that you no longer notice the weight until you take it off, at which point you feel like you might float away. It hangs from your shoulders, and that's its cruelty. The whole load sits on 2 small areas, which is why you wear a belt cinched tight to take some of it onto your hips. Without the belt, after 4 hours your shoulders would be in genuine pain. The rings are cold. Iron in December is a substance that actively pulls warmth out of you, which is why the scarf at your throat isn't decoration. Bare skin against mail on a night like this rubs raw in an hour and then freezes. You oiled this shirt yesterday. You oil it constantly. Rust is the permanent enemy in this country. Everything iron here is engaged in a slow argument with the weather, and losing means a shirt that seizes into a solid mass. So you work oil and fat into it, and you scour it, and once a month you put it in a barrel with sand and roll it around, which sounds absurd and works perfectly. Your hands smell of that oil. Your hands always smell of that oil. It's the smell of your adult life. Over everything, the cloak. You could talk about the cloak for an hour. Heavy wool, undyed or nearly, with enough natural grease still in the fiber that rain beads on it for a while before it gives up. It fastens at one shoulder so your right arm stays free. It has a hood you can pull forward, and tonight you have it forward, which cuts the wind off your ears and turns the whole world into a narrow tunnel directly ahead of you. It's not waterproof. Nothing is waterproof. It's simply slow to soak and warm even when wet, which is the actual property that matters, and which is why wool has clothed everybody standing on this wall for as long as there has been a wall. Yours has a burn on the hem from standing too close to a brazier last winter. It has been mended twice. It smells of wood smoke and sheep and you, and if somebody handed you an identical one, you would know within seconds that it wasn't yours. At your belt, a dagger, which you use for eating and cutting rope and everything except fighting, a pouch with a few coins, a spare bootlace, a small whetstone, and a piece of the hard biscuit in case the night goes long. The flask of beer. Your sword hangs on the other side, a long one, cavalry length, which is what auxiliaries carry. You have drawn it in anger exactly never. You clean it every week. Your spear is in your hand, and it's honestly more useful as a walking stick, a probe for ice, and something to lean on than as a weapon. Tonight it's all three. Your shield is in the turret against the wall, painted, with a leather cover on it to keep the damp out. Carrying it up and down a stretch of wall all night would be a punishment. And everyone from the sentry upward quietly understands that the shield's place on a quiet watch is leaning somewhere dry. No helmet, as we said. It's in the barrack room, cold to wear and you can't hear. And that's you. That's the entire man standing on a wall in northern Britain at the end of the first watch. 2 tunics, trousers, wool wraps, 2 pairs of socks, boots with iron in them, a shirt of 4,000 iron rings, a belt, a scarf, a greasy cloak with a burn on it, a dagger, a sword you never use, a spear you lean on, and somebody else's oil on your hands. You could put all of it on in the dark in under 3 minutes, and have done many times. None of it was designed for beauty. Every piece of it is the answer to a problem somebody had, and the problems were solved a long time ago by men who are dead, and the solutions were written down and copied and issued. And now you wear them without knowing whose idea any of it was. And here's the strange comfort of it, which arrives most nights around this hour. Everything you're wearing has been worn by somebody before you in this fort or another one, and will be worn by somebody after you. The mail will be repaired and reissued. The cloak will go to a man whose cloak has failed. The boots will be resold by the man in the settlement twice more and then given to someone smaller. You are, for 25 years, the temporary occupant of a set of equipment that will outlast you. That's not a sad thought at 3 in the morning. It's oddly steadying. The same feeling as the mason's mark on the parapet block, or the worn dip in the stair. You shift the weight on your shoulders, hitch the belt, pull the hood forward again, and walk your stretch. Relief comes up the steps, making more noise than necessary, which is on purpose. Nobody wants to appear silently out of the dark next to an armed man who has been listening hard for 3 hours. There's a short exchange. The word is asked for and given. Then a handover, which is 4 sentences long and contains everything the next pair need. Wind from the northwest, sky clearing, a light out at the farm, a bird up in the scrub about halfway through, and nothing after it. That's the whole report. 2 years ago you would have thought a report should be more than that. Now you understand that the value is in its shape. Same 4 things, same order every night, so that anything unusual sticks out of it like a nail. You go down. And here's the part that people imagining a soldier's night never think about. You're not going to sleep. Not yet. The second watch isn't yours to stand, but you're not off duty in the way you would understand being off duty. You're simply not on the wall. You go to the barrack room. 8 men share it, in a space that would feel small for 4. There are 2 rooms really. An inner room for sleeping and an outer one for kit and cooking. And the outer one has a hearth that somebody has kept alive. The heat coming off it's not much. It's enough to change the temperature of your hands. and you stand in front of it for a while doing nothing at all, turning them over, which is the closest thing to luxury available to you tonight. Your cloak goes over a line to steam gently. It won't be dry by morning. It hasn't been properly dry since October. 2 men are asleep already, and one of them snores in a rhythm so established that the others have stopped hearing it. One man is mending a strap by firelight with the particular slow patience of somebody who has all night and nothing else to do with it. One is writing. Writing isn't rare here. That surprises people. This is an army that runs on paperwork. Duty rosters, strength reports, requests for leave, complaints about supply, notes about who is sick and who is at the quarry and who has been sent to fetch something and not come back yet. Thin slices of birch and alder written on in ink, folded, tied, carried. Half of what passes for administration on this frontier is a man squinting at a wooden postcard. The one being written now is a request for leave, and it's being agonized over because the wording matters and everybody knows it. You lie down. The bed is a wooden frame with a straw-stuffed mattress that has been slept on by many men before you, and it smells of straw and smoke and other people. You keep most of your clothes on. Everybody does. Undressing in a stone room in December is an act of faith that nobody here has. You don't sleep immediately. You rarely do on a broken night. Instead, you lie there and listen to the fort do its second watch without you. Boots overhead on the wall stare. The scrape of the grain quern still going, which means somebody is well behind on tomorrow's bread. A horse, somewhere, shifting its weight and knocking a hoof against wood. The wind, dulled to a rumor by 2 feet of stone. And underneath all of it, the deep, particular quiet of a place where 100 and some people are asleep at once. You think about the word tonight, and whether you would recognize the voice of every man on this stretch of wall in the dark. You decide you probably would. You have heard them cough, complain, sing badly, and swear at frozen straps for 2 winters. You know them by sound the way you know the wind at the turret door. You think about the arithmetic of your service, which you do most nights, and which never improves. You're some way in. There's some way to go. It's a number you handle carefully, like a hot pan. You think, briefly and without much drama, about the fact that you will probably not go home, not because anything is going to happen to you, but because men who serve out their time on this frontier mostly stay near it. They take a woman from a nearby settlement and have children who speak the local language better than they speak yours, and end up farming a plot 2 miles from a fort they once stood on, and are buried here under a stone with their name and their unit and the country they came from written on it, which is how anyone will ever know they were from somewhere else at all. That's not a tragedy. You're not lying there grieving about it. It's simply the shape of the life, and you turned it over long ago and found it acceptable, and tonight you turn it over again out of habit, the way you might turn a coin in your pocket. Somebody adds a log. The light on the ceiling changes. The man mending the strap finishes, examines it, and isn't satisfied, and starts a section again. You're warm now. Not warm exactly, but no longer actively cold, which after 4 hours outside feels like being handed something. Your feet ache as they come back to life. That deep, unglamorous ache that means blood is going where it should. You have new socks, sent from a very long way away by somebody who loves you. You're wearing both pairs. And with that, at last, you go under. You sleep for perhaps 2 hours. It's not deep. Broken watch never is. You surface twice, once at a noise that turns out to be a door, once for no reason at all, and each time you check the quality of the dark and the sound of the wind and then let go again. The second watch passes over you like weather over a field, and then a hand on your shoulder. Lying in the dark of the barrack room, not yet asleep, you can hear the whole small society of this place breathing around you, and you know more about these men than you know about anybody you grew up with. There are 8 of you in this room, and you didn't choose any of them. The one who snores was a farmer and still thinks like one, and will tell you the state of the ground and what it wants doing whenever you walk anywhere together. The one mending the strap is the best-liked man in the century and has no idea. There's one who is genuinely devout and gets quiet teasing for it and doesn't mind. There's one who owes money to nearly everybody, including you, and who is entirely open about the fact that he won't be paying it back, which has somehow made him harder to be angry with. And there's the young one, who arrived in autumn, and who is currently on the wall in the second watch, being extremely cold, and slightly frightened and pretending to be neither. He will be all right. You were him. Someone stood next to you and said almost nothing, and that turned out to be exactly right. So that's what you do for him now. You came from a long way to be in this room. Not from Rome. Nobody here's from Rome. You're an auxiliary, the non-citizen half of this army, recruited from the edges, and the men in this fort were raised in country your grandparents would have called foreign. Units get named after the people they were first raised from, and then get posted 1,000 miles away and topped up locally for a century, until the name means a tradition rather than a birthplace. So there are men in this fort who have never seen the homeland their unit is named after, and never will, and who nonetheless get slightly sentimental about it when drunk. You still speak the old language when you're angry or counting. Latin is the language of orders and paperwork and the parade ground, and yours is the language of your teeth and your temper. At home, the gods live in the rivers. That's not a figure of speech to you. Here they live in the rivers too, only they have different names, and it has never occurred to you that this is a contradiction. There's a small altar in the settlement to a local god you had never heard of 2 years ago, and you have put a coin down there, and would do it again, because the god of a place knows the place. There's also the official religion. The standards, the emperor's birthday, the parade, the sacrifice on the right day. That's not belief exactly. That's belonging. You do it the way you would stand up when a senior man enters a room. And then there's the god a lot of men in this army have taken up privately. The one with the bull worshipped in a small dark room in stages, men only in a rank you work your way up. There's a room like that near here. You haven't gone in. 2 men in this barrack have, and neither will discuss it, which is entirely the point, and also faintly irritating. Somebody coughs. Somebody turns over. The fire has gone down to a red bed with no flame at all. You think about food, which is a reliable way to pass time and to make yourself miserable. Wheat mostly. Bread and porridge and more bread. Bacon, mutton, sometimes beef when a beast is slaughtered. Fish sauce that comes up in jars from the south and makes everything taste of itself. Lentils, beans, cheese. Onions and garlic and whatever green thing can be grown or gathered. Beer daily. Wine when there's wine, which is a good day. And apples. There were apples in autumn and they're gone now, and you think about them more than a grown man should. You have eaten better here than you did at home if you're honest. And you're rarely honest about this because it feels disloyal, but it's true. At home there were years when the harvest failed, and everybody simply ate less for a long time. Here, the granary is full and the cart comes, and there's bread every single day whether the weather is kind or not. That's what an empire buys with all this stone and all this counting. Bread on a bad year, in a country where the harvest fails. You're being paid too, in theory. In practice, your pay is a number that has things taken off it before you ever see it. Food, kit, boots, the burial fund, the bedding, the replacement of anything you have lost. And what arrives in your hand at the end is small, and mostly gets spent in the settlement within a week. Nobody gets rich. There's a savings account of sorts held for you with the standards, which you're not supposed to touch, and which some men manage to leave alone and most don't. Somebody outside crosses the yard, boots on frost, going somewhere, and you find yourself doing the thing you always end up doing on a broken night, which is trying to picture the whole of it at once. This room, and the fort around it, and the wall running off in both directions, and beyond that, the province and the sea and Gaul, and the roads going south and south and south, until they arrive at a city you have never seen and never will, where somebody who has certainly never heard of you made a decision 90 years before you were born about where a line should go, and here you are, in the dark, at the far end of that decision with cold feet, in a wool cloak that won't dry, listening to a man snore. It's not a complaint. It's closer to wonder, though you would never use that word. The young one will be halfway through his watch by now. The cold will be in his hands. He will be counting the parapet blocks and thinking that the night will never end, and it will end, and in the morning there will be warm bread. You close your eyes, and the second watch goes on above you without you. Footsteps passing over the room every so often, steady, unhurried, exactly as they have passed over this room every night since it was built, and will go on passing for a very long time after everybody in it's gone. There's no gentle way to be woken for the third watch, and nobody attempts one. A hand, your name, and then the man moves on to the next bed, because he has 4 people to wake, and no interest in your feelings about it. This is the hardest moment of the night. Not the cold, not the hours, not the dark. This, the 90 seconds between lying in a warm hollow you have spent 2 hours making, and standing up in a stone room in December. You sit on the edge of the bed with your feet on the floor, and you don't move. Everyone does this. It's a universal and unspoken allowance. You get a few seconds of sitting perfectly still, hating everything, and then you stand up, and nobody ever mentions it. The cloak comes down off the line. It's not dry. Of course it's not dry. But it's warm from the fire, and for about 4 minutes it will be the finest garment in the Roman Empire, and you know exactly how long that 4 minutes lasts, and you intend to spend it walking, out into the yard, and the cold arrives properly. The temperature has dropped since you came down. The clear sky has been pulling heat off this country all night with nothing to stop it. There's frost on everything now. On the water trough, a skin of ice you break with a knuckle. On the timber, a fine white fur. On the stone steps, a treachery you have to think about, and you go up with a hand on the wall and your weight back. Your breath goes up in front of you, lit faintly by nothing at all. The stars have moved, that's the clock, and by now you read it without effort. The whole sky has swung west while you slept, and the constellation that was over the crag when you came down is now well past it. You don't know the names the way an educated man would. You know the shapes, and where they sit at each hour of a winter night, which is more useful, and which you learned by standing here. Hand over again. The word. The same 4-part report, delivered by a man whose jaw is stiff with cold. Wind dropping, sky clear, frost coming hard, nothing to speak of, nothing to speak of. Good. And now you're alone with the third watch, which is the strange one. The first watch is still connected to the evening. The fourth watch has dawn at the end of it, pulling you forward. But the third belongs to nothing. It sits in the middle of the night with no edge to hold on to. And it's the watch where the mind goes wandering, and every soldier who has ever stood it knows this. The fort behind you is entirely asleep now. Even the grain quern has stopped. The wind has dropped, which changes everything. Without it, the wall is silent in a way it almost never is, and the silence has texture. You can hear the ditch and something in the scrub, and once, very far off, a dog or a fox pretending to be one. You walk your stretch. You count without meaning to. The parapet has a rhythm of blocks, and you have long since learned how many there are between the turret and the point where the wall turns, and your feet do the counting even when your head is elsewhere. Your head is elsewhere. This is the hour when you think about home, and you let yourself, because the alternative is to spend 3 hours resisting it, and arrive at dawn exhausted by your own discipline. So, a river, wider and slower than anything here. Willows, the particular green of a country where it rains warm instead of cold. A house with a door that stuck, and the trick of lifting it as you pushed. Your mother's voice from another room calling somebody who wasn't you. A dog that has certainly been dead for years now, whose name you say quietly to yourself on the wall in the third watch, and then feel slightly foolish about, and then say again anyway. You wonder whether the field was planted this year, and by whom. You do the arithmetic of distance, which is a bad habit. It would take you weeks. Roads, then a ship, then more roads. You know men who have done it on discharge, and you know men who talked about doing it for 20 years, and then didn't. Then you make yourself stop, because there's a discipline to this too. You're allowed the visit, but not the residence, and you turn your attention outward again, deliberately, north, and it's beautiful. It's genuinely, unfairly beautiful, and this is the part you would never say aloud in the barrack room. The frost has silvered everything within your sight. The ditch runs pale. The land beyond it rolls away in long, low shapes, black on gray on black, and the sky above it's enormous and utterly clear and full. If you stand still and let your eyes go wide, more stars keep arriving, filling in the gaps between the ones you already had, until the sky is less a dark thing with lights in it than a light thing seen through gaps. You breathe out. The cloud of it drifts and thins. Somewhere behind that sky, according to men who have thought about it more than you have, Everything turns on fixed spheres in perfect order. You have no opinion about that. What you have is the direct evidence of your eyes on a cold night, which is that the sky is deep and old and does not care about the wall or the empire or the 11.5 denarii, or you. Oddly, that's a comfort. It's one of the few thoughts available up here that makes the night feel shorter rather than longer. You walk back. You look in on the lamp, which is burned down and needs its wick pulled up, and you do that with numb fingers and get soot on them. You lean on the parapet. You're, and it's important to be honest about this, quite close to sleep. Standing up, eyes open on the northern frontier of the Roman Empire, you're drifting. Your thoughts have stopped connecting properly to one another. Twice you come back from somewhere and can't say how long you were gone. This is the danger and the reason for the whole system. The tessera, the rounds, the man at the next turret with his lamp. Not because anyone expects an attack tonight, because human beings can't reliably stay awake in the dark alone. And the Roman army knew that, and built a structure that assumes it rather than pretending otherwise. So you do what everyone does. You move, you walk the stretch again, faster, until your blood shifts. You press your knuckles into your eyes. You take a mouthful of sour beer from the flask at your belt, cold enough now to hurt your teeth. And you look east without hope, because it's far too early. Nothing, black. The third watch has to be finished, and there's no shortcut through the middle of a night. You simply stand in it, and let it go past, one block of parapet at a time. There's a long stretch in the middle of the third watch where you simply walk, and the walking does your thinking for you. And what surfaces tonight is the people out there. You look north a great deal. It's your job. And in 2 years of looking you have arrived at something that would surprise the men who write about this frontier from a comfortable distance. You do not think of them as enemies. You think of them as neighbors you're not allowed to visit. You know roughly where their farms are. In daylight you can see 2 of them from this stretch. Round houses, thatched, with a bank and a hedge around a yard. Smoke coming up in the morning. In summer there are cattle on that slope and children moving them. And you have stood up here in July watching a boy fail repeatedly to get a cow to do something, and laughed out loud alone on the wall. They come to the gate. That's the thing. There's trade at the mile castles, and there's trade at the fort, and people from north of this line walk south through it carrying things to sell and walk back through it with things they have bought in their counted and looked at and let through. Some of them have Roman pottery in their houses. Some of them have Roman coins they can't spend anywhere except at this wall. There are men out there who have worked for the army, carting, cutting turf, supplying beasts, and been paid for it. The border isn't a line between 2 worlds. It's a line with a market on it. And yet, there are also nights when somebody's cattle go missing and everyone knows roughly which valley they went to. There are patrols north of the wall that come back with nothing and say little. There are people out there who lost land when this wall was laid across their country, because it was laid across somebody's fields, inevitably, for 80 miles, and no one asked. And there are families that were split by it, north and south, who now need permission and a gate to visit each other, which is exactly the kind of small permanent grievance that outlasts everybody who caused it. You have heard the office's word for the people here. It's a diminutive. Little Britons, said the way soldiers everywhere talk about locals, half contempt and half convenience. You do not use it, though you have heard it and let it pass, which is its own small thing to carry. Because here's what you know that a man who has just arrived doesn't. You're also a provincial. Your grandfather was on the wrong side of a river from Rome. Your people were conquered too, within living memory. And now here you are in wet Britain wearing the conqueror's mail, standing on a wall being paid in the conqueror's coin, watching somebody else's country. That's how it works. That's precisely how it has always worked. The empire doesn't garrison a frontier with Romans. It garrisons it with the last people it absorbed, a long way from home, where their loyalties have nothing local to attach to. You have thought this through before up here, in this exact watch, and it has never once made you want to put the spear down. It simply sits alongside everything else. The socks, the bread, the 25 years, the document at the end. A dog barks out there, a long way off, then stops. You wonder if somebody out there is awake, and whether they can see the pale line of the wall in the frost, and what they think about it. Probably nothing most nights. Probably it's simply the wall, the way a hill is the hill. Their parents watched it go up. Their children will never know the country without it. Within 3 generations, nobody will be able to remember what this valley looked like when it ran, uninterrupted, and the wall will just be a fact of the world, like weather. That thought does something strange to your sense of time, standing there in the cold. Because this stone is new, you can still see chisel marks. In places the mortar is barely set, and yet you already can't imagine the country without it, and neither can anyone else, and it has been here, what? Less than a decade. You wonder how long it will stand. You assume forever, in the way that everybody in the middle of an empire assumes forever, and you would be astonished to learn otherwise, and there's no reason at all for you to think about it further, so you don't. The cold has moved into a new phase. It's under the mail now, which is the phase where wool stops being enough and you begin negotiating with yourself about how much longer. You walk faster, to the turn and back, 61 blocks. At the turret you look in at the lamp, which is still going, just. You warm your hands over a flame the size of a thumbnail, which does nothing measurable, and helps enormously. Out again. The frost is properly down now, and the whole visible world has gone silver-gray and completely still. Not a breath of wind. The ditch water has stopped talking. There's no sound at all except your own boots, and when you stop, nothing. Absolute silence on a wall, under a full sky, at the top of the world. Nights like this are the reason men who serve here for 25 years, and then take their discharge and their document and their citizenship, men who could go anywhere in the empire, anywhere at all, end up buying 2 fields, 4 miles down the road and staying. They will tell you it was the land, or a woman, or that they were too old to start again. But it's partly this. It's standing somewhere this quiet, this cold, this enormous at 3 in the morning with a frozen face, and finding that some part of you has quietly agreed to belong to it. You wouldn't say that aloud in the barrack room either. You walk back toward the turret, counting, and somewhere in the counting the 3rd watch finally begins to run out. The other thing the 3rd watch does, if you let it, is give you the whole year at once. You have been here long enough now to have seen this stretch of wall, in every condition it has, and standing on it in the frozen dark, you can run through them like turning over stones. Spring comes late and doesn't commit. There's a period of several weeks where the country is simply wet. Not raining exactly, just wet. Top to bottom, everything sodden, the turf giving under your boot at every step, the ditch running brown and full. Nothing dries, your cloak doesn't dry. The barrack room smells permanently of wet wool and the fire can't cope. And then one morning, without warning, there's a completely different smell in the air, green and sharp, and something is flowering in the scrub below the north face, and the birds go absolutely mad at dawn, so loud that a man coming off the 4th watch will stand at the bottom of the steps and just listen to it. Summer up here isn't warm the way you understand warm, but the light is extraordinary, and nobody at home would believe it. It barely gets dark at midsummer. There's a long blue dusk that goes on for hours and never quite finishes, and then the sky in the north stays pale all night, and the 1st watch and the 4th watch happen in a kind of permanent twilight where you can see the hills the entire time. The nights are so short that a man on watch is almost cheerful. You can see for miles. You can see the cattle on the far slope and the smoke from the farms, and on a very clear day, a line of higher hills a long way north that you have never been to and never will. That's when the work happens. Repairs. Ditch clearing, which is filthy and endless because a ditch left alone becomes a slope, cutting turf, carting stone, somebody always deciding a section needs rebuilding. In summer you're outside for 14 hours, and you're exhausted in a straightforward physical way that produces excellent sleep. There are also flies. Nobody mentions the flies in any account of this frontier, and there, in July, a serious presence. Autumn is the good season and everybody agrees. The air goes clean and cold, the ground firms up, the light turns, and comes in low and gold across the country in the late afternoon, and makes even the ditch look handsome. The traders come through with the last of everything. There are apples. There's a general, unspoken agreement to eat well while eating well is possible. And there's a particular evening in October when you go up onto the wall for the 1st watch and realize you can see your breath, and everybody makes the same joke about it, and everybody means the same thing underneath the joke. Then winter, which is where we are. Winter here isn't dramatic. It's not white mountains and heroic blizzards, whatever you might imagine. Snow comes and goes and rarely lies long. But winter is, up here, is dark and wet and long and gray, month after month, with about 7 hours of proper daylight and a wind that comes from the northwest with nothing in its way. The nights are enormous. That's the real weight of it. A watch in December is a serious undertaking. The same watch in June is a pleasant walk. Men get low in February. Everybody knows it, and nobody has a word for it. There's a stretch in late winter where the good food is gone. The light hasn't really come back. Everyone has been indoors together for too long, and small disagreements start turning into real ones. The officers know this too, and are, in your experience, slightly more careful with the roster in February than they're in September. You have your own methods. You keep a thing to look forward to, always, however small. The bathhouse on your rest day. A parcel that might come. A festival, and there are a great many festivals in this army's calendar, and every one of them means better food and a day of not doing this. You count in weeks, never in years. That's the single most important trick, and nobody teaches it to you. And then, at the far end of it, the light comes back and the whole cycle starts again, and you will have completed another one, and be that much closer to the bronze document with your name on it. Standing in the frost in the third watch, running through all of that, you arrive somewhere unexpected. You know this place, not as a posting, as a place. You know where the wind comes from in each season, and which stretch of wall floods, and where the frost lies longest, and which slope greens up first. You know what the birds do in April. You know that the far hills go blue before rain. 2 years ago none of this existed for you. Now it's simply knowledge you have, the way you have the knowledge of the river you grew up on. Somewhere in the last few months, without deciding to, you stopped being a man posted to Britain and started being a man who lives here. You're not sure how you feel about that. You turn it over in the cold at 3 a.m, and you don't reach a conclusion, and that's fine. There's no conclusion required tonight. The frost tightens, the stars have swung further west, your breath goes up and thins out. You walk to the turn and touch the corner and walk back. There's a change in the night that has no sound and no light attached to it. And every man who has stood this wall could tell you the moment it happens. The third watch ends. The fourth begins. You don't get relieved this time. You're standing this one through. The rota fell that way this week, and it will fall differently next week, and there's no point having feelings about it. The fourth watch is the coldest. That's not an impression. It's simply true. And it surprises people who assume the small hours after midnight must be the worst. They aren't. The land has been giving up its heat all night patiently, hour after hour under a clear sky, and by now it has almost nothing left to give. Whatever warmth was in the stone is gone. Whatever warmth was in the ground is gone. The last of it goes just before the sun comes back, which is a joke of a kind, and not a very good one. You feel it arrive in your hands first, then your face, then the long bones of your legs. And the dark is different too, deeper. The moon, if there was one, has gone. The stars have swung as far west as they're going to go for you tonight. The land north of the ditch has stopped being a landscape with shapes in it, and has become one flat absence. This is the hour that soldiers on every frontier of this empire are taught to take seriously, and it's worth telling you why, because it explains everything about how you're standing right now. If anyone ever comes, they come now. Not at midnight, when men are fresh off their beds and the fort is still half awake. Now, at the end of the fourth watch, when the men on the wall have been awake for hours, when the cold has got into their thinking, when the dark is thickest, and the mind is least reliable, and the body is quietly begging to sit down. Attack the tired hour. Everybody who has ever fought at night knows it. So the fourth watch is stood differently. You already know this in your body without anyone reminding you tonight. You do not sit, not once, not for a moment, no matter what your legs say. You keep moving the whole length of your stretch and back, and again, and again. You keep your eyes off the lamp, and every so often you stop, and stand perfectly still, and listen with your mouth slightly open, which sounds absurd but genuinely helps. Nothing comes, nothing is coming. Tonight is an ordinary night, and you will finish it exactly as you started it, and in a few hours you will eat bread and go to sleep. But you stand it properly anyway. That's the whole thing. That's the entire unglamorous 400-year answer to how one empire held a border across the top of an island. Not by winning battles here, because there mostly weren't any, but by having a man walking a cold stretch of stone at the worst hour of the night, on a night when nothing whatsoever was going to happen, for year after year after year. The rounds come by once during this watch. You hear the horse before you hear the man, hooves on the road behind the wall, unhurried. Then the challenge, and your answer, and the word given quietly, and a short human exchange that's not in any regulation. Is it as cold up there as it looks? Yes, it is. Worse, and a sound that in daylight would have been a laugh. Then he moves off east, and the hoofbeats get smaller, and you're alone again. That 2-minute conversation will keep you going for an hour. You wouldn't have believed that when you were new here. You do now. Time behaves strangely in this watch. It doesn't pass evenly. There are long stretches you can't account for at all, and then a few minutes that seem to take a very great while. And the only honest measure is the sky, and the sky is barely moving. You walk. You count parapet blocks, 61 to the turn and back. You think about nothing much. This isn't the home hour. That was the 3rd watch, and it's over. The 4th watch is too cold for memory. Your mind has narrowed to a small practical circle. Your feet, your hands, the next length of wall. The dark to the north, the dark to the north, the dark to the north. Your thumbs have stopped working properly. You put your hands under your arms inside the cloak, which is the warmest place available to you, and you walk like that, spear in the crook of your elbow, which would look ridiculous to an officer and which every man on this wall does at this hour. At some point you become aware that you can see your own hands again. Not clearly, not as hands, but as something paler than the stone. You do not trust it. You have been fooled by this before many times. The eye invents light when it has been starved of it long enough, and after 7 hours in the dark your eyes are enthusiastic liars. So you don't look east. You deliberately don't look east. You give it another circuit, all the way to the turn and back, counting, refusing. And then you look, and there's a line, along the bottom of the eastern sky, no color in it at all, just a place where black has become very slightly less than black, a gray so faint you could talk yourself out of it. But it's not on your eye, it's out there, it has an edge, it has hills in front of it. That's the sun, still a long way under the world, sending the first of itself around the curve of the earth to a wall in northern Britain where a cold man is standing. You will see this again roughly 100 more times before your service ends, and it will do the same thing to you every single time. The relief isn't here yet. Dawn doesn't release you, the end of the watch does, and those aren't the same moment. There's a stretch of time still to stand. The strange gray interval when the night is technically over, but nothing has changed, and the cold gets one last turn. You stand it, and the light comes up so slowly that you can never say when the change happened, only that it keeps having happened. The line becomes a band. The band gets a color, thin and cold, more green than gold. The stars start going out from the bottom up, the faint ones first, in the order they arrived. The land comes back. The ditch, then the scrub, then the long shapes of the hills, then, very gradually, the wall itself, running away east and west from where you stand, white with frost along its whole length, all 80 miles of it, and every mile of it with somebody on it doing exactly what you have just done. The middle of the 4th watch is a long, flat country with no landmarks in it, and the only way across is to keep putting one foot down after the other. So let us go slowly through it together, because that's what it's actually like, and because there's nowhere else either of us needs to be. Your stretch of wall is about 400 paces. You know it the way you know a room in the dark. There's a place where the walkway dips very slightly and catches water, and is therefore ice tonight, and you step over it without thinking. There's a block in the parapet with a mason's mark on it that you found in your first month, and have touched every night since, which is superstition, and you're aware it's superstition, and you touch it anyway. There's a place where the wall crosses a small gully on an arch, and standing on it the sound changes, hollow underneath, and you always notice. You walk to the turn. You touch the parapet at the corner. You walk back. Somewhere around the middle of this watch, you stop being able to feel your face properly. Not numb exactly. You can feel the cold, that's very much still available to you. But the fine control has gone. Your mouth doesn't work well. If somebody spoke to you now, your first sentence would come out badly and you would have to try again. Your eyes stream, and the tears are cold on your cheeks, and you wipe them with the heel of a hand that can't feel the face it's wiping. You do the things you know to do. You clench and unclench your hands 20 times inside the cloak. You roll your shoulders back and drop them. You lift onto your toes and down again, 20 times, which is undignified and which nobody can see. You put your hands into your armpits, which is the only reliable heat you own. And you keep your feet moving, because the ground steals warmth through leather faster than anything else. And a man who stands still on frozen stone for an hour will be in genuine trouble by dawn. The great enemy isn't the cold. The great enemy is the idea of sitting down. It arrives around now, every time, and it's very reasonable. It points out that you could sit in the turret out of the air for a few moments, that nobody would know, that nothing is happening, that nothing has happened all night, that nothing will happen, and that the difference between a man walking a wall and a man sitting 10 feet from it is, on a night like this, precisely nothing. The idea isn't wrong. That's what makes it dangerous. It's entirely correct in the narrow sense, and if you sat down you would almost certainly get away with it, and the night would be no different. You do not sit down, not out of fear of punishment, although there's punishment, and it's severe, and everyone knows what it is, and nobody ever needs to mention it, and not really out of duty in the noble sense either. You do not sit down because the man at the next turret is not sitting down, because the young one 2 positions west on his first winter is watching how this is done, because you have stood next to men who did sit down, and you know exactly what you thought of them, quietly, afterwards, and you have no intention of being thought of that way. That's the actual mechanism holding this frontier, not the ditch, not the stone. Several thousand men individually, in the dark, each declining to be the one who sat down. You walk to the turn. You touch the corner. You walk back. Time does something odd here. You will come out of this watch genuinely unable to say whether it was 2 hours or 5. There will be a stretch you can't account for at all, not sleep. You were walking the whole time, but the record simply doesn't exist. Your mind protects itself by declining to store hours in which nothing occurred. What you will remember in years to come isn't the hours, it's 3 or 4 small things. The sound of your own hobnails, changing pitch as you cross the arch. The moment a barn owl went past below the parapet, silent, pale, close enough to see, and you stood absolutely still with your heart going, and then laughed at yourself. The taste of beer so cold it hurt, and the light when it came. Because it will come. That's the one entirely reliable fact available to you up here. And on a night like this it functions as something close to faith. The world has turned every single time so far without exception, and there's no reason tonight should be the exception, and therefore the black in the east is temporary. You have known men who didn't really believe that at 4 in the morning. Everybody has a night like that eventually. Somebody usually stands with them. Nobody needs to stand with you tonight. Tonight is only cold. You walk to the turn. You touch the corner. You walk back. Down at the Mile Castle somebody moves a lamp, and you see it, and it means a man is upright, and that's enough to carry you another circuit. You think, briefly, about the fact that this exact hour is happening right now along the entire length of the wall, 80 miles of it. Every third of a mile 1 or 2 men doing precisely this, walking a short stretch, touching a corner, walking back, refusing to sit down, and on every other frontier of this empire, at whatever hour it currently is there, on the Rhine, on the Danube, on the edge of the desert where the cold is worse than anyone believes, the same thing. Hundreds of thousands of men, across thousands of miles all night, every night, staying awake in the dark for years on end, so that almost nothing happens. That's the empire, not the marble. This. You walk to the turn. You touch the corner. And when you walk back, the sky in the east has changed, and this time it's not your eyes inventing it. Sound comes back before people do. A door somewhere below, a bucket set down on stone, a cough, then a horse and a voice telling it something, and the first smoke of the morning going up from the ovens, and the smell of that smoke reaching you on the wall top is one of the great pleasures available in this life. though you would struggle to explain why to anyone who hasn't been outside all night. The fort wakes the way it always does, badly, slowly, and all at once. Your relief comes up the steps. Same noise as ever, deliberately made. The word is asked for and given one last time, and tonight's word dies right there. By tonight there will be a new one, and this one will never be used again by anyone. You give the report. Wind dropped in the third watch, frost hard after. A light out at the farm early on, gone by midnight. A bird up in the scrub. Rounds came by once, nothing to speak of. The man taking over from you says something about the frost, and you agree, and there's nothing else that needs saying, so you go down. The steps are worse now than they were. Frost has had all night to work on them, and your legs have had all night to stop being reliable. So you go down the way an old man goes down, one hand on the stone, both feet finding each step before you commit. At the bottom, the yard. Somebody has broken the ice on the trough again. Properly this time, a hole you could get a bucket into. You put your hands in the water, which is so cold it's almost hot, and you wash your face, and the shock of it is the closest thing to a decision you will make all morning. Then bread. New bread, out of the ovens within the hour, still warm in the middle. You tear it, and eat it standing in the yard in the gray light with your cloak still on and your fingers barely working, and there's nothing in the world at this moment that's better than this. Not wine, not a bath, not a warm bed in a house in a country where it rains warm. This. Bread that's warm, after a night that wasn't. You eat it slowly and you don't talk to anyone. The sun isn't up yet. Not over the crag, but the sky is properly light now, that flat white winter light with no direction to it, and the frost is beginning to let go of the timber and go dark in patches where the ground is starting to think about the day. Two men come past on their way to the gate. One of them says something to you, and you answer without really hearing either sentence. Somebody is arguing about the 11.5 denarii again, and you go inside into the barrack room, which is warm, actually warm. Hours of fire in a small stone space, so warm it makes your eyes heavy the moment you step through the door. The nightmen are coming in behind you, cloaks going up on the line, steaming immediately, boots off, which is the sweetest and most disgusting moment of the day, all of you at once in a small room. You lie down in your clothes on the straw. The mattress is exactly as it was. The snoring man has stopped snoring and gone to work, and someone else has taken his bed and started. Light is coming through the door in a long pale rectangle, and there's noise everywhere now. The whole fort up, 100 people beginning a day, hammering and voices and a cart and somebody counting something out loud. None of it can touch you. You have done your night. It was cold and long and completely uneventful, and you stood every hour of it, including the worst one, and the wall is still there, and so are you, and in a week you will do it again. Your feet are warming up in 2 pairs of socks sent from a very long way away. Somewhere west of here, a woman is writing to another woman about a birthday. North of the ditch, a farm is putting up its morning smoke into the same sky, and the people around that fire have also just got through the same night, and probably think about the wall as often as you think about them, which is to say, some days, and the sky over all of it is going quietly white, and the frost is going, and the day is somebody else's problem now. You let your eyes close. The last thing you're aware of is the sound of the fort, which isn't quiet at all, and which is the most restful noise you know, because every part of it means somebody else is awake and standing and watching, and it's not you. Sleep well.